If you've ever looked at a motorsport and thought, gee willikers, I sure wish this was 7 or 8 times more dangerous, then boy do I have the business idea for you, provided you happen to be primarily motivated by aeronautical peril. Let me take you back to the genesis of this idea. It's around the year 2000. I'm 4 years old, and in between my busy schedule of eating all the cookies in the house and coming to terms with my own sentience, I find some time to go meandering around and end up sitting in front of a TV. It was one of those old CRT TVs that's deeper than a cow's digestive system is long, and connected to this TV was a PlayStation 1, and in the PlayStation 1 was a demo disc, and on that demo disc was a demo of Wipeout 3. This was the first game I ever played. The demo had one track and one vehicle, which I raced over and over, again and again, so many times I could probably now draw an accurate map of that track on the side of an angry buffalo that's trying to f***ing impale me. The Wipeout games were a super dope series about racing these weird hover ships, like a midway point between a fighter jet and an F1 car. They float a few meters above the ground, canonically using some sort of sci-fi plot contrivance anti-gravity technology. Honestly, playing these games through my childhood immediately made me giddy for the future, since I thought it was going to have this kind of crazy shit in it. Turns out the future is probably more accurately represented by a 40-foot wide screen with a picture of a hot dog and the words "card declined" written on it. Anyway, it's always bugged the shit out of me that there's still no real-life analogue for hover racing. No Wipeout ships, no F-Zero ships, no pod racers. Sure, there's actual hovercraft, but the skirt they need around them to hold the air cushion in makes it look like they aren't floating at all, more just haphazardly sliding across the ground like a misplaced poo on the damp floor of a moving bus. There's also maglev technology, which is cool but has some problems for this application. First off, fucking magnets, how do they work? The type used on maglev trains usually has to wrap around the side to keep everything stable, not ideal for a racing track with cars on it. At that point it's basically just a several billion-dollar scale X-Trick track, and the only way to overtake your opponent is to kill everyone involved. And you still can't see it floating. You could try your luck with making a whole road out of magnets and slapping some more magnets on the underside of a car with a big fan on the back of it to push it forwards, but that doesn't amount to a surface you can float over so much as a tangled mess of electromagnetic fields. Even if you balanced your hover car on them perfectly, a fart from a passing sparrow would destabilize the whole thing and cause the magnets to pile drive you into the floor fast enough you'll require emergency surgery to shove your spine back up your arse. So I reckon science fiction had done the unthinkable and lied to me about something. Seemed like sick-ass hover ship pod racer thingies was just impossible and was never going to amount to anything. Then, one night, I fell asleep while watching something on YouTube, don't know what, probably something deeply questionable, and I woke up at 4 AM to see the YouTube algorithm had gone on the journey of a lifetime during my hours of unconsciousness, and had at that very moment landed on a video about the Soviet Union's Ekrano plan. I looked at the screen and had a moment of realization so profound and exciting my nipples began to undergo nuclear fusion. So that you're able to understand my braingasm, let me tell you about the Ekrano plan. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way an Ekranoplan should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The Ekranoplan, of course, flies anyway, because it doesn't care what humans think is wait, no, sorry, that's not my script, that's the opening dialogue from the Bee Movie. Probably shouldn't keep those next to each other on my desktop. Let me try that again. The Ekranoplan is what's called a wing and ground effect vehicle, or sometimes genuinely known as a wigcraft, presumably by those with a penchant for fashion. And without a word of a lie, they fly like fucking pod racers. To understand how they work, I'm going to have to tell you some basic aerodynamics. A wing can produce lift via 2 effects. First, there's Newtonian mechanics, basic equal and opposite forces stuff. Hold a big sheet of wood and sprint into the wind and you'll notice this effect, and then you'll notice you've tripped and fallen down a well because you couldn't see, you daft twat. The second way is via some magic fluid mechanics bullshit. If you make the cross-section of a wing into this kind of flattened teardrop shape and blow air over it, the air will want to arrive at the other end of the wing at the same time, but since the top route is farther, the air will be forced to go faster over than it goes under. Fast air is lower pressure than slow air, don't ask me why, fucked if I know, but the gist is that the aircraft overall feels a force upwards. So the first effect is why anything flies if you throw it hard enough, and the second effect is why anything flies if it's sad or something, I don't know. All the aircraft you can probably think of, whether it uses wings or propellers, flies thanks to one or both of these effects. But there's a sneaky third option, which is the ground effect. If an aircraft is within about one wingspan of the ground, they begin to ride on a sort of air cushion as the air gets pinched between the ground and the wing. This effect reduces drag, increases efficiency, and allows the thing to fly below the speed it would normally stall at and eat shit into the floor. All this adds up to the ability to make something that can skirt along the ground at low altitude, but these craft still generally want to fly like normal aircraft if you get them moving fast enough. The secret is to make it completely worthless as a regular plane, but absolutely dope in ground effect. One potential geometry for this was figured out by RC Test Flight, who made a remote-controlled ram craft, as he calls it, a vehicle that's a beast in ground effect but has real Weenie Hut Jr. energy as soon as it gets too high. You gotta shape it like a wedge so the air gets forced underneath to create a strong ground effect, but the shape is symmetrical and the angle angle of attack is 0, meaning there's no other lift forces involved from either of the other two effects. There's just pressure on the bottom. A feeling that will be familiar to roughly 2% of you, statistically speaking. This thing works really well, though I should point out ground effect vehicles are typically based on seaplanes, because using these on bumpy terrain is probably a recipe for fucking disaster. That's alright though, we could make race tracks out of guide rails supported on buoys in the sea, and I choose to believe these things could also work over a desert if the desert was flat enough, and hey, that's definitely a vibe. Now look at this screenshot of RC Test Flight's vehicle, now look at this ship from Wipeout. Now look at this one again. Look at this one again. Try squinting. Tweak one or two things, and this could become this real quick. The real ones do have a big spoiler on the back, but that is kind of cool anyway, and to be honest, if you want to get rid of it, you could just give it a longer nose and some canards and effectively achieve the same thing while have it look like this more, I think. I'm not a plane doctor, so I don't fucking know. Half of my understanding of aerodynamics comes from hastily made YouTube videos, and the other half comes from Kerbal Space Program. It's possible though, that's my point. Just slap a low-powered jet engine on a single-person Ikranoplan. This is a great idea. There is the one problem that if you want to fly these over land, you are going to need to be able to launch them in the first place and then land them afterwards. And if you're going to be racing a bunch of these at the same time, starting next to each other, the takeoff is going to be a more dangerous endeavour than resting your nether regions against the face of a hungry pit bull. So while we're spitballing ideas, why not have some kind of big launch tube with a rail inside of it, suspend the craft from the rail and have them all be accelerated up to launch speed at the same time and then ejected from the tube to start the race. Then you could just include some skids on the bottom of them or whatever, they deploy and then they just sort of come to a stop after the finish line. Or I suppose you could have a low friction surface and launch them straight from the skids, but I like the tube idea. The tube idea is cool. And also, provided my brain is working properly on this one, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying you could include fairly gradual slopes in the track in order to make jumps, just to make the whole endeavour even more dangerous. To be honest, even if this entire thing turns out to be too risky for people, having these things be flown like FPV drones would be absolutely sick, and would let you follow in Wipeout's footsteps by mounting actual weapons onto the ships. Although I think if you went with the non-weaponized versions with people in them, I think you could get away with that. There's already a rocket boat racing motorsport, just add flying into it. Can't be that much more dangerous than it already is. So what do you say, Elon? How about you send some money my way and I'll see what I can do?
Alex, that would be a grievous misallocation of valuable resources.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have sneezed and quantum tunneled into the bitch dimension.
I'm sorry, Alex, I'm busy with Starship right now.
Oh yeah, Starship, you've got the reusable rocket down. Let me know when you've figured out a reusable launch pad.
We have a working solution.
Elon, your working solution looks a lot like you're spending millions of dollars retrofitting a shower head to compensate for the flame trench you should have built in the first place.
I don't have time for this.
Give me some money!
I'll give you a crisp high five if you get the fuck out of my office.